Howdy, class. Welcome back to me, I guess, more than to you, because you're here. But anyway, so we are going to talk about motivation and goals this time. Last time, we talked about thinking, I think. I went and got lunch, so it has been a forever time. But anyway, so that's where we're just going to keep going. This video is going to feel very duh. And it is. A lot of this stuff is common sense and it's what you expect. There's no mystery here. We're literally going to talk about motivation and goals. So, what do you want is the big burning question. How will you try and get it? These are, questions that you ask yourself probably on a regular basis. And how do we do it? With goals and strategy. And I'm literally going to define goals and strategy, just so we're on the same page. Goals are the ends that one desires, so the outcomes that you're hoping and aiming for. And strategies are the means we use to achieve goals. Yeah. These goals drive our behaviors by influencing what you focus on, what you think about, and what you do. And it shouldn't surprise anyone that people don't always behave consistently with their stated goals. They don't. But let's talk about that. Not the people, but literally goals and motivation. This whole chunk's motivation. So there are long-term goals and short-term goals. Yeah, this is where we're going, folks. And being aware of our long-term goals can help a person make better decisions as well as organize their short-term goals. So, yeah. I'm going to say a lot because it feels really obvious. So, we need short-term goals in order to achieve long-term goals because that's how you get to longer-term goals, by having shorter interim, more obtainable goals in the short term. Being aware of connections between your goals gives your life meaning and purpose. So it's good to be able to shift between multiple goals at once. Now I'm going to talk about a couple different theoretical frameworks and ways to describe goals, because there's empirical literature and research on this. So idiographic goals. Idiographic goals are goals that are unique to the individual that pursues them. Typically, they consist of current concerns. So usually this is an ongoing motivation that persists in the mind until the goal is either attained or abandoned. These can also be personal projects, such as this is literally just the efforts that you put into goals. So like your own personal working on them. And lastly, personal strivings. So these are the long-term goals that can organize broad areas of life. People tend to have strivings that are consistent with each other. I flipped that. So people can have strivings that are inconsistent with each other. So career and family, those goals may not be compatible, or at least can be really hard to achieve, or may require you to be spending time in different places. So if you want a family, that means you got to go out and date and go find that special someone, versus a career where you have to stay late in the office. And usually that means not go out to find that special someone. Okay. So in general, properties of idiographic goals include that they are conscious at least some of the time. They have to be like deliberate thoughts and feelings and ideas. They tend to describe thoughts and behaviors that are aimed at fairly specific outcomes. These goals can change over time and are assumed to function independently. And what do I mean by function independently? What I mean is these goals don't necessarily affect each other. People can have goals that are inconsistent, but those goals can kind of build on each other, like short-term goals lead to long-term goals. It's how you achieve the long-term goals. For example, when I realized that I wanted to keep doing research and consider doing the whole professor thing, I knew that it would take multiple steps to get there, such as like going to graduate school, getting into graduate school, writing, and you just break up every little step needed to reach that long-term goal to get there. I realize that this lecture seems duh, but it's kind of illustrative of one of the nice challenges of personality psychology. Is personality psychology focuses on almost the common sense stuff. It's not the stuff to surprise you. Like, maybe it would surprise you if long-term goals were needed in order to reach short-term goals. Because that's backwards. Backwards would be surprising. Unusual, surprising. But yeah, no, these are literally just common sense stuff. So yeah, goals don't, especially in this idiographic framework, don't have any theory organizing them. The uniting factor is you. Now, nomothetic goals is kind of a way to find out what the essential motivations are that virtually everyone pursues. We're going to lean on Henry Murray and a lot of his work here, and McClelland as well. The idea with nomothetic goals is they can bring some order to idiographic goals. And the number of goals can vary, but the primary motivators tend to boil down to 3. So we got need for achievement, which are essentially goals that lead to striving for excellence. Need for affiliation, so goals of finding and maintaining close and warm relationships, warm and emotional relationships. And third, need for power, so the need to feel strong and influencing of others. These tend to be those related to seeking prestige and status. Now, under Emmons' framework, there are 5 goals related to enjoyment, self-assurance, esteem, interpersonal success, and avoidance of negative affect, so avoidance of negative feelings. Or you can even break it down into 2. Now, 2 is not the name of the theorist. You can break it down into work stuff and not work stuff. Work stuff and family stuff. Cool. So, also within this framework, there are 2 kind of types of goals. You've got judgment goals and development goals. And judgment goals are primarily kind of sought out as a way to judge or validate an attribute about oneself, versus development goals, which are kind of a desire to improve oneself. Now, these lead to different outcomes, especially in academic settings, both in terms of response to failure. If you are aiming for like doing well on a test as a way to validate a skill. If you don't do well on that test, it can lead to a sense of helplessness because you've been evaluated. It's not a way to kind of highlight room for improvement. And if you have closer to a mastery orientation, this tends to come from development goals where you learn and try harder after facing failure versus judgment goals where you give up after failure. So in this class, I really try and strive for students to approach this class from a development goal standpoint, which is why the assignments, you get a free, one of your test drops, your worst test, which typically is students' first test because they learn from their feedback without any penalty, versus, and same with your written assignment. People tend to drop the first one and learn from it. That's why I gave you all video feedback, because the goal was so that you could learn from it. Much of my feedback was in suggestions on improvement were aiming towards written assignment 2 and 3. Now, the balance of these goals differs across people, and they change kind of over time and across situations. So you could be like a development type person in like schoolwork, but in evaluation of like, athletic ability, you're racing not to like get better, but to like be evaluated. So these can be domain specific. So I want to put this within the context of growth mindset as a way to frame responses to failure in these different goal-based approaches. So growth mindset is a way to approach feedback and kind of just thoughts about personal qualities. And these can so growth mindset is another way, essentially a way to frame incremental theories of ability versus entity theories of ability or any real personal quality. So an entity theorist believes that personal qualities are unchangeable. These tend to lead to judgment goals because you think that the quality being judged is fixed, that there's no way to improve it, it's just what it is. So it's a fixed mindset is kind of what this falls under. Versus incremental, where it's this belief that personal qualities can change with time and experience. These tend to lead more towards development-based goals, where your goal is to improve, to get feedback so you can improve, so you can master the material. And there are a lot of interventions aimed at students who have a fixed or entity-based mindset, because those students are the ones where they receive a bad grade and they don't incorporate the feedback. They assume they give up faster. Negative feedback is really just demotivating. Well, in fact, you can improve. Feedback is effective. That's why I give it. That's why I give a free test and essentially a penalty-free test and a penalty-free written assignment, so that you can incorporate the feedback without penalty. There's no disincentive. So you can learn. Because everybody in this class can improve, and I tend to see it every semester. First test is pretty rough, because it is a different way of assessment than you're used to. Even though I give you as much scaffolding as possible, it requires that you really know the stuff, that you're not just recognizing it, but can recall it. And it's hard. And I do it on purpose. I know that may be horrifying to hear, but I literally make the first test really hard on purpose, so that you can realize that your study strategy probably wasn't very effective. I had the same study strategies in college. So yeah, cool. I've got a last little bit to talk about. So, research on this area, so research on incremental theorists finds that they tend to do better following failure and tend to have higher achievement just in general. They respond better to failure, and don't let it bring them down. They take that feedback and incorporate it. This can affect relationships with others. There's cool interventions as well as experimental interventions, manipulations that can increase that inclination towards incremental theory, the growth mindset, and you can also influence the types of goals that you seek out can be influenced by those characteristic ways of help. And how a task is even structured by others. Cool. Okay, so next time we're going to talk about motivational strategies. Yeah. Also, there's lots of weird little chunks here. So I'll see you then. Bye-bye. And I'm going to eat my sandwich. And hopefully I cut out this little piece here.